Good day, dear students. Welcome back to our class. Last time we differentiate language used in academic texts from various disciplines. But before we continue with our lesson, let us have a recap of our previous discussion. We had given examples of academic texts and non-academic texts. So these are poems, skits, letters, compositions are examples of a non-academic text. On the other hand, we have book review, reaction paper, and thesis are examples of academic texts. But have you really pondered on what are the difference between academic texts and non-academic texts? We also had classified these words or phrases whether it is an academic or non-academic text. So for the academic text, we have research papers, validate idea, objective, scholarly audience, and formal. On the other hand, the non-academic text, we have personal opinions, no fixed structure, it is subjective, informal essay, and diaries. When we say academic writing, it is formal and not personal writing, which is intended for a scholarly audience. These are based on research, factual evidence, opinions of educated researchers and scholars. In academic writing, there is also a rigid structure and layout which includes introduction, thesis, an overview of topics discussed, and of course, a well-written conclusion. In addition, the main aim of academic writing is not to entertain people, but to inform the audience with a non-biased information, backing up with the writer's claims with solid evidence. There are some tips for an academic writing. Number 1, always use formal language. You have to avoid using colloquialism or slang words. Second is don't use contractions. These are shortened verb forms. The use of the third person point of view and avoid the first person point of view. Also, you don't have to pose questions, but you have to convert these questions into statements. Avoid exaggerations or hyperbole. Don't make sweeping generalizations. And lastly, you have to be clear and concise and avoid repeating. How about non-academic writing? So this is a writing that is not intended for an academic audience. So it is written for a lay audience or the mass public. And this type of writing may be personal, it is impressionistic, emotional, or subjective in nature. Specifically, these are the examples of non-academic texts such as email messages, personal opinions, newspapers, magazine, and blog article. In describing a non-academic text, these are masterpieces of anyone whose audiences are general public. And the author style of writing is informal, casual, or sometimes use language, unlike with the academic text. Another is that it does not have any reference to support the idea of the writer. And it is also found and read through newspapers, magazines, blog articles, Facebook posts, email messages. And the author of non-academic writing does not have credentials like educational background, other writing, or even experience mentioned in their writing. So for the point of view of a non-academic text, since it is subjective and personal, it is based on personal opinions and feelings rather than on facts that comes from reliable sources or information. And it is since it is asking rhetorical questions, it is also a self-evident and used for style as an impressive persuasive device. It also have an obvious answer, but the questioner asks it to lay emphasis on the point. So we differentiated the difference between academic text and non-academic text. But what is academic language? This is the language used in the classroom and workplace, the language of text, the language of assessments, the language of academic success, and the language of power. And the term academic language refers to formal English that uses structure. It also has a specific rules and content for academic dialogue and text, and the communicative conventions that allow students to meet the demands of school environments. In addition, academic English is the language of the classroom of academic disciplines like science, history, literary analysis, etc., of text and literature and of extended reasoned discourse. It is also more abstract and is contextualized than conversational English. There are some features of an academic language. It has a unique set of rules. It should be explicit, formal, and factual, as well as objective and analytical in nature. However, students often think that academic language should sound complex and be difficult to write and understand. That is not necessarily the case. So instead, academic writing should be clear and concise in order to communicate its contents in the best way. So it is important to remember that academic texts are written with an academic audience in mind, and your writing style needs to conform to the conventions in the field you are studying. For example, the language used at university at various features which distinguish it from the language styles used in the other contexts. Okay, so in academic language, it should be formal, objective, impersonal, and precise. Okay, so when we say formal, it requires considerable effort to construct meaningful sentences, paragraphs, and arguments that make the text easy to comprehend by your reader. So you have to choose words precisely and carefully so that the reader can accurately understand the concepts within the text. And also in academic writing, the tone used in academic writing should be formal, meaning it should not sound conversational or casual. And it also requires you to use full forms rather than contractions. For example, write do not instead of don't, it is instead of it's, they have instead of they've, and so on and so forth. And in academic writing, it should be based on research and not on the writer's own opinion about a given topic. So it should be objective instead of subjective. So when we write objectively, you are concerned about facts and not influenced by personal feelings or biases. And in presenting your argument to the reader, you have to show both sides if you can and avoid making value judgments. At the same time, you will probably have to do an analysis or a discussion, and that matter express an attitude. In order to convey attitude without using, for example, I think, you may use such as apparently, arguably, ideally, strangely, and unexpectedly. So you have to know that the attitude you are expressing should not be based on personal preferences, but rather on evidence that you are presenting. In addition, in academic language, since it is impersonal, it should not refer to yourself as the performer of action. So this involves avoiding the personal pronouns such as I and we. So for example, instead of writing I will show, you might write this report will show. The second person you is also be avoided. So to avoid personal pronouns in academic writing, so these are the things that you have to remember. The use of passive voice instead of an active voice. Also the use of a third person, so we have examples here. And making things rather than people the subject of sentences. Lastly, it should be precise. So these facts that are presented should be presented accurately. So the choice of words are appropriate. The use of technical terms to achieve precision is applied. Okay, so after the lesson, I want you to take a short quiz through the link, or you can use also the code 02254670 in joining the short quiz. Please don't forget to write your real name. Thank you so much.